A moment. Okay, so we are starting with the seminars on Robert Philipson, Linguistic Imperialism, and the first group, which is basically composed by Mirelli, Natalie, Raquel, and Vanessa, are going to present the first chapter, which is entitled ELT, Taking Stock of a World Commodity. So uh, I'll give you the word. Okay, have a nice presentation.
Teacher,
Some
just a
Oh, a
second because
problem.
Vanessa, yes, she's saying she has a problem. So let's wait for her. I don't know what happened.
We can wait for her for some time.
Yeah.
Okay, okay for you.
Pronto, pronto, já tinha desconectado o negócio aqui.
So can I start, Vanessa?
Pode ir.
Okay. Can you see the slide, guys?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
Yes.
Just a second. Okay, so we are the first group, and the name of our chapter is Taking Stock of a World Commodity, as the teacher said. And our group is formed by Mirelli, me, Natalie, Raquel, and Vanessa. And we are going to talk about these four topics here. And I will start talking about how English became a global language. Well, it all started with the British colonization in North America and also the genocide of indigenous people that lived there. And because of this, the language of the indigenous people was overshadowed by English. And after this, we'll also have the 13 colonies, and they were used for the establishing permanent settlements in America. So if the British people they were living there, so they were speaking in English, and then again the language of the indigenous people is going to be overshadowed because they had this, you know, they had to talk the English language. So that's why the English got spread so much. And many of the immigrants who came to the New World, which was called the 13 colonies, the America, because they discovered it later, they came to escape from religious persecution. So example, the Pilgrims, about the Thanksgiving. They went to America because of it, because religious persecution. And now moving on to the World War II, it started in 1939, but the United States only joined the war in 1941 after the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor, which means they weren't as tired or as destroyed as the other countries were, so it was an advantage to them. And in 1941, the United States, they were still recovering from the Great Depression, who happened in 1929. Um, and when the war started, actually, when they joined the war, it changed because more people were needed to produce food, to produce weapons for the men who were on the front lines. And during the war, 17 million new civilian jobs were created. Also, industrial productivity increased by 96%, and corporate profits after tax doubled. Um, and also, United States was on the winner side, so they didn't have to pay fines or go through anything else the countries which were on the loser side had to go through. So now talking about the American way of life, um, it was disseminated after the World War II and also strained after the Cold War. And to this day, it is a parameter of behavior for the United States of America. And it means characteristics were nationalism, liberalism, consumerism, and also the appreciation of the purchasing power. And also the happiness obtained through material. When you buy things, it served as an escape from all the ailments the country suffered in the First and the Second World War. And also, the United States, they sold the image of happiness through consumerism, as I said before, in which buying, spending money, and also having free time in family leisure activities was the center of it all. You know, and cars became an object of desire with the shipping carried out by businessman Henry Ford. Okay, so television, cars, and things like this, they sold this image, you know? You can see here, world's highest standard of living. So America was the center, you know, during this time. And now it's Natalie's turn. Let me just turn off my mic.
Okay, good morning. My name is Natalie. I will talk about English, the international language. Next slide, please. So let's make that I want to travel to China, but I don't speak Chinese. How can I communicate with people there? Um, I just need speaking English and they probably will understand me because English has become a lingua franca. And what is a lingua franca? Lingua franca is a bridged language. It's a language to connect people and make communication possible. It's a language that's adopted as a common language between speakers whose native languages are different and not necessarily English. That's why English nowadays is a lingua franca, not just a foreign language. Next slide. In chapter 1, taking stock of a word commodity, the author says that when the need for a global communication comes to exceed the limits set by language barriers, the spread of English accelerated, transforming existing partners of international communication. So, English has the power to connect people and make the global communication possible. Next slide. Okay. Um, the strength of English language is doubled, especially when it's come to countries with a greater cultural influence, such as the United States and England. In addition to cultural power, English is important because it's the official language of nations that are powerful in economic, political, and scientific. Because of that, English is one of the official languages of the UN. The Union has six foreign languages: Mandarin, Russian, French, Spanish, Arabic, and English. This determination is established in the UN Charter, the founding documents of the organization. Um, English is also the universal aviation language. Today, the English language is recommended by the International Civil Aviation Organization as the official language of aviation. And today, this requirement is not only for pilots, co-pilots, and flight attendants, but also for functions such as airport agents, controllers, traffic, and all those involved in the daily operations of airports. English and French are the official languages of the Olympics, and all documents must be in the both languages. The International Olympic Committee decided that the language or language of the host country would become an Olympic language for the duration of the games in the country. This means that all advertisements must be in English, French, and the language of the host country. So we can see that English does not belong only to American or British people. It belongs to the world. So it's Vanessa's turn.
Hello, now it's Vanessa talking, and I'm going to talk about the impact of language. Next. As Natalie said, English influences a lot wherever it goes. It's always there to be like a bridge between different nations or different languages. But the question that I want to bring here is this influence always good or useful to the people who use it, or it can be more like a problem to them? Well, sometimes when the language is too poor, when one of those languages of these nations is too poor or is too small, it must represent a dangerous thing to introduce in your country because English is always going to permeate the mother tongue of those who are learning it. And it happens through linguistic borrowing, where they start to use English words to describe new things that they didn't know before, or they change the words they already use it in their own language to the ones they learned in English. And as time goes by, this can affect a lot the language that was there before. It can be like a genocide for those languages. Some of them is going to be replaced or even completely erased. And as we already know, the United States, because of its history of power, like Mirelli already told us about, it seemed like a model for others, and the language is not differently. It's not different. Learning English is now like a symbol of prosperity and progress. And there is also a speech that says the opposite too, that those who don't know English are treated as someone who is literate, they that they belong to a poor country. And this speech, because English should be spread all over the world, uh, it, English is almost everywhere in the world, as USA, the United States, were saviors, like the good guys in the history who helps other nations to become successful like them. Kind of similar to how the Romans acted in the past in an attempt to conquer other nations. Can you skip the
Yes.
slide?
Let me just make a remark here. When she talks about the language being poor, the language in contact with English, I suppose, and you can confirm me, but I think you were talking about economic power, aren't you?
Yes, like
Yeah,
the
it's not in
nation was
terms of
poor.
structure, it's not in terms of vocabulary, okay? A poor language meaning a language of a poor people, a people who do not have the uh, m- monetary power, okay? Just to make this
Yes.
remark to make things clear, okay? Go
Okay,
on.
it's better. Okay. Um. Okay, like the Caspar Weinberger said, there is no corner of the world so remote, no nation so insignificant that it does not represent a vital interest of the United States. So this, anyways, because of this speech that English is related to success, many people who really need some help, who really need uh, economic help, may end up putting their hopes on learning English as if this is going to solve their problems. But the reality is that this investment they put on teaching English doesn't generate a significant improvement to their country. If they only depend on that, these nations are always going to be far from the ideal model of American life that is presented to us. And many times, this called help given to these countries is actually being observed by people who want to profit from it. They don't really intend to help, but pass the image of helping. Uh, Skip the slide, please. And as I already said, this teaching can be more like a problem, can bring new problems to these nations, and even more because this language teaching will often be brought without a study about their local education system, without a study of how the native language of those peoples is. They don't know about their culture, and as possible future teachers, we need to know that for teaching to work, it's necessary to relate what we are trying to teach with those people's reality, and this is not what is happening. Now it's Raquel's turn.
Okay, I'm Raquel, and I will be talking about the role of the teachers in teaching English, considering that they are the main agents in these educations together with the experts. Next slide, please. Okay. The Fox First Chapter is the vision of the dimension their English has talking throughout story and the ways which is increasingly globalized. Mixing of the language and all influence both by its example, political, economic, military, and cultural, historical. All these influences the learn of the language and the impacts that it leaves. When we consider that English is present in several countries and regions, it is a way to understand that English would have um, a linguistic variety. These varieties are studied by specialists who consider the cultural context and express that words, terms, expressions, accents will be different in the place where English is present. So, why is important to know this? Phillips deals in the book on language pedagogy, which is concentrated in the classroom and the related organizational and methodological issues. So, when the teacher is going to teach English language to the student in the classroom, the ELT explains that there are material methodologies for the learning their students and for knowledge of the language. But it is necessary to highlight the importance of the culture and all the influence that in language brings. Philipson makes it explicit in the book that despite all the ELT is an international activity with implications political, economic, military, and cultural trends. And it is a hug demand created for the language teachers because, in addition to the teaching the standard and everything that a language teacher needs to have, all of the above is very important for the student to assimilate to the importance of the English in the world and how relationships are creating a dependency on communication in the language. However, I would like to emphasize that it is important to pass the teaching with the volume the speaker's mother tongue, considering that they are not talking about native, but students of the language. Okay? Because the language is influence culture. In conclusion, next slide, please. In conclusion, their chapter deals with the importance of the English and how it has impacted in their perception of culture. Is culture is very important for the teaching, and that ELT is the basis for English teachers and language. In addition, the knowledge of the languages continuous is teaching methods are also updated according to time. And this is end of our presentation and thank for your attention.
Okay, thank you so much. Uh, well, we had some issues with your audio just at the end, but I think we got the message from your presentation. Girls, if you could share the screen again, slide by slide, so that maybe your classmates would like to make some kind of intervention or discuss something. Could you share the screen again? Maybe I'll guide some
Peraí, professor,
interventions.
só um momentinho.
Okay, Mirelli, no problem. Before we exhaust chapter one, before we finish chapter one, sorry, before we enter chapter two, let's discuss chapter one. So, one of the first interesting things is that Philipson names this chapter Taking Stock of a World Commodity. Now, those of you who are used to the language of the market, what is a commodity? And why does Philipson compare English to a commodity? Let's see a definition of commodity in the dictionary.
I think it's because of the part that I said that most of the time the English teaching are being observed by people who want to profit from it. They want to earn money uh, and
Yeah,
not help people teaching English.
yeah. English is something to be bought and sold. Okay. I'll read a definition of commodity for you. No need to share the screen. This definition is from the Cambridge Dictionary. Uh, just a moment. A commodity, it's a noun, a substance or product that can be traded, bought, or sold. Okay. Uh, what else? Anything that can be bought or sold. A substance or a product that can be traded in large quantities, such as oil, metals, grain, coffee, etc. A financial product that can be traded, a thing or quality that is useful. So we have an ambiguity here between something that is useful and something that can be sold and bought. Okay. Now consider the case of Brazil. Do you think this image of commodity is able to describe our situation here? What kind of considerations can you bring out of these naming English as a commodity thing?
I think the English has become a product that's making money. Uh, English is teaching because the people are interested,
Yeah,
learn because the money.
yeah. Let's try to compare Philipson's view with David Crystal's view. Remember, David Crystal said that English was at the right place at the right time. Do you remember that?
Yes, teacher.
Now, what's Philipson's view of this? Would you say Philipson totally disagrees, partially agrees, or completely agrees with Crystal?
I think he partially disagrees. I
Mm-hmm.
think.
Mm-hmm. Would you support that? I'll read a passage from Philipson for you to make it clear, okay? Uh,
Okay.
uh, in page 6, chapter 1, page 6. When I say page 6, I mean the number of pages in the book, not the PDF. The last paragraph, he says, what this extract does not refer. He's mentioning an extract. So let's read the extract before. The spread of English, he quotes Ferguson, a linguist called Ferguson. The spread of English is as significant in its way as is the modern use of computers. You see? So he's comparing language spread with technological spread. When the amount of information needing to be processed came to exceed human capabilities, the computer appeared on the scene, transforming the processes of planning and calculation. When the need for global communication came to exceed the limits set by language barriers, the spread of English accelerated, transforming existing patterns of international communication. I think you mentioned this quote. I think your group has mentioned
Yes.
this passage. So, what does Philipson say about this? What this extract does not refer to is the forces, economic, political, intellectual, and social, which have propelled English language which have propelled English forward. The spread of English has not been left to change, and the language pedagogy has played a part in this process. So, language pedagogy, teaching English, teaching a language that is a commodity, is not simply teaching a language, but it's also teaching a way of life. It's teaching a culture, as you mentioned in your seminar. It's teaching to the in an extreme interpretation. It is also teaching an ideology, and by ideology I don't mean only a political ideology, but ideology interpreted as the way and the only possible way that we can see reality. Okay, ideology. I used to say, I normally say that ideology are those glasses that we have to wear to communicate, and we can never take them out. So everybody has an ideology. Yesterday, I was watching the session in the Supreme Court, and the minister Cássio Marques was using this argument to justify that Sérgio Moro may have been like partial, because everybody has an ideology and nobody can escape an ideology. Yes, that's true. Nobody can escape an ideology. But of course, when we are dealing with the law, we should try, at least try to be distanced from the object. But anyway, there is a certain reasoning in this. So when we teach a language, we are also teaching a way of life. It's kind of a propaganda of a people's way of life, of a people's beliefs, like you mentioned, liberalism and so on. So nothing is by chance. It is not by chance. It was not that English was at the right place at the right time. It was calculated policy on the spread of English, especially after World War II, which has economic implications. Okay, I'd like to mention that. Can you move to the next slide? Let's explore your slides. And maybe I'd like to open the word for your classmates. Guys, do you have questions for the girls? People. I wouldn't say guys. I'll say girls and those boys here like me. Please, I beg your pardon, because it's the majority. So, do you have any question for the group? I would really appreciate if you could dialogue about the classmates' presentation. Somebody on the chat? Oh yeah, Vivi.
It's not exactly a question. I just found very interesting a quote that they brought. Um, I don't I don't know how to say it exactly. If you could find it in the slides, that one about the you know the interest that any like small nation can
This one?
is. Yes, exactly.
Oh
That
yeah.
is so. That is an interesting idea. Like there's no corner of the world so remote, no nation so insignificant that it does not represent a virtual interest of the United States. That is strong. That is not a joke, man. And
Yeah.
I kind of want to know your opinions, the group's opinions about it. Do you agree? Do you think like every
I agree.
single small country in the world can be of interest to the United States?
Actually, in my opinion, okay, I think that they prefer especially these remote places, because they don't have economic power. So since they don't have this economic power, they will take advantage of them, because they need this, let's say, support of USA, because they don't have, for example, big expectations to. I don't know how to say this in English. É, eu vou falar em
Speak in
português.
Portuguese. No
Ok.
problem.
É porque eles não têm essa estrutura toda para poder se manter. Aí então os Estados Unidos vai, eu quero comprar isso aqui de vocês e tudo. Aí, como eles não têm esse poder econômico tão grande, eles não podem desperdiçar os Estados Unidos querendo comprar. Porque os Estados Unidos pode comprar de quem ele quiser, porque ele tem muito dinheiro. Então, quando ele chega nessas nações pequenininhas, dizendo que ele quer comprar alguma coisa, algum produto deles, eles vão vender. Porque eles vão vender para quem? Quem é que vai se interessar nele, sabe? E esse tipo de
Ok.
coisa é o que eu penso.
Momento desabafo. Né? Even those
Sim.
powerful, even those powerful nations, or when they are becoming powerful, nations are heterogeneous units. So, for example, take the case of the elites in Brazil. It's not of the interest of our elites to be powerful, to have a powerful country, because of our history, because of our slaveryist tradition, because of our homophobic, uh, racist, and chauvinistic background. So we have an elite that is not happy to have a welfare state. They want to have a good economic condition, but it's not enough. They need to see someone else in a lower economic condition so that they can step on their heads, and then they sell the country. Those are the patriots who do continence to the American flag, if you know what I mean. If you know what I mean. So the problem here is a geopolitical problem. Brazil has suffered at least 3 big interferences of the United States. The first one was in the naming of the republic. I don't know if you know, but we used to be Estados Unidos do Brasil when the military founded our republic, because Brazil, as a republic, was born in a military coup d'etat. And then in 1964, again. And again, it was the communist shadow scaring people. And, well, they left us aside for some time. And when we became to be powerful in terms of oil, because Americans love oil, then Brazil was a threat again. And then they needed a new government that was subservient to their economic interests. Well, I know we are talking about language policy and not about geopolitics, but these things are interconnected. It is only possible to have a subservient people if we have a colonized people, and language and culture and movies and music and the way of life and consumerism are a good way of colonizing. Well, that's what I had to say. Philipson is a very political book. When you read Philipson, and Philipson, I told the groups who asked me for help, who talked to me last week on WhatsApp or on Google Meet, we should look at Philipson at his times. He's writing from the 90s. He is watching the rise of what people called globalization. And now those who promoted globalization are criticizing globalization because of China's rise in terms of economic power. And they are trying to close again in their own economies. If you take the case of Donald Trump, if you take Bolsonaro's discourse, they are anti-globalists. They want to establish like what they call bilateral partnership instead of global trade, because in the setting of global trade, uh, something unexpected, or not so unexpected, but something got out of control. China has emerged as a powerful nation, and it's necessary to isolate China. It's necessary to isolate Russia. I don't know if you heard about the vaccination thing that the United States Health Department pressured Brazil not to buy the Sputnik V vaccine because of geopolitical interests, because they considered Russia an evil influence over Brazil. Did you see that? Did you see that on the news? It's
Yes,
a
teacher.
it's a document. It's in the annual report of the Department of Health, equivalent to Ministério da Saúde in the United States. It's in their documents that they got in touch with Brazilian government to pressure not to buy Russian vaccines. And what was the promise? What was the reward for that? Nothing. Nothing at all. So, well, these videos are going to be on air. They are going to be on Siga. And if I'm punished because it's a fashion now, ask for my habeas corpus, okay? Let's go on. Any other question? There's a passage here I'd like to read, maybe to provoke a reflection. In my, I don't know if you had my version. The book that you have is the one that is noted by me. I don't think so. Eu acho que eu tomei o cuidado de não passar para vocês a versão que eu anotei do lado, né?
Tem algumas linhas, umas coisas
Yes.
marcadas.
Então tem uma parte aqui que eu escrevi que ele dá um pau no Crystal, né? Ele abre frontalmente uma disputa com Crystal. Page 8, the first paragraph. In language pedagogy, the connections between the English language and political, economic, and military power are seldom pursued. Language pedagogy tends to focus on what goes on in the classroom and related organizational and methodological matters. So we transform a language that is the support of a culture, the support of an ideology as a set of beliefs, as a subject. I mean, an academic subject, a school subject, like math, like chemistry, like physics. You see what I mean? We depoliticize language, and language is political. You learn this also in social linguistics. When you read Marcos Banho, when you read Faraco, you see how political language is. So in professional English teaching circles, English tends to be regarded as an incontrovertible bloom, as does language policy and pedagogy emanating from Britain and the USA. It is felt that while English was imposed by force, again. It is felt that while English was imposed by force in the colonial times, contemporary language policies, and this is he's not quoting, but he is addressing to Crystal, contemporary language policies are determined by the state of the market, which means demand, and the force of argument, rational planning, and legitimating the export of English to the rest of the world has been so persuasive that English has been equated with progress and prosperity. As the language that has no ideology, it was just in the right place at the right time. But there was force behind it. There was a genocide behind it. As you girls brilliantly mentioned at the very first slide. Languages, especially the European languages, most of them were imposed, and religion played a role in this too, by means of genocides. So there was an Azteca genocide, there was an Apache genocide, there was a Tupi-Guarani genocide in Brazil, Yanomami genocide, and we have seen that this word is again in fashion. It's a fashion now, and every process of domination can be carried out by two bias, by means of two strategies, either seduction or force. Nowadays, the strategy seems to be more of a seduction. But when everybody is seduced, there's no need to seduce anymore. It's time to conquer, if you know what I mean. Anybody else would like to make comments?
Me, teacher. I
Yeah.
was only going to say that I think it's interesting that people are calling this new, let's say, stage of English the modern colonization, because they are not, imposing language by killing people or,
Yeah, sometimes they
trying
kill.
to. Sometimes, okay, but not all the time.
Yeah.
They are doing it by, imposing power because they have the military power. They have cultural power because
Mhm.
Hollywood movies, like it's all from the United States. So I think now is this modern colonization.
It's almost a commonplace that English is important, that English is determinant for our successes, individual success. And highlight this word, individual. Individualism is the basis of neoliberalism, which is the ideology that the United States exports to the world, but they don't practice in their own territory. So competition, the notions of competition, the notions of individualism, self-investment. So if you are not successful, it's not the government's fault. It's your fault because you didn't invest enough. You didn't make enough efforts. You were not successful in promoting yourself as a good labor force, if you know what I mean. It's the meritocracy discourse. The meritocratic discourse has a lot to do with the American way of life, with the self-made man. How was Barack Obama presented to us? As a man born in Hawaii that was poor, a son of immigrants, that was successful, a successful lawyer, got married, had children, and became the president of the United States. It's almost like Disneyland. In Disneyland, the slogan is "You can be whoever you wish. Just wish. You can be whoever you want to. Just wish upon a star." So, well, I've been wishing upon a star, but it's a red star. It's another thing. I won't go into this here. I've been waiting for a bearded guy, but it's not Santa Claus. Anyway, this ideology that we do not need the state, that we do not need the public power, that the economy and the invisible hand of the markets will regulate everything. Let me just read the comments here. Mirali says that they are always romanticizing poor people. Yeah. And well, let me try to establish a bridge here. I'm not a specialist in religion, but I know that the Jew, they have this idea that they are the chosen people. They have the promised land. It's in the Bible that, what was his name? My God. Abraham had the promised land from God, and he should move there and colonize it. Well, the pilgrims in America, they saw what they called New England just like that. They see themselves as a kind of enlightened people, chosen people, that should take their model of democracy overseas. So Iraq has some oil, but they do not have democracy. So let me take them some democracy and bring their oil here. Now, Venezuela has a dictator. What is the coincidence? There's also oil there. So let's take Venezuela some democracy. Brazil has discovered pre-sal. Well, they want to invest 75% in education and 25% in health. No, they need some democracy because there is a gang robbing Petrobras. So let's take Brazil some democracy. Let's invest in investigations over Petrobras. Let's bankrupt Brazilian engineering companies. What is the consequence of this bankruptcy? Unemployment and our economy in, I don't know how to say in English, in frangalhos. Okay. Anyway, let me see the comments. Yeah, let's bring freedom to the oppressed people. Yeah, it's the Marshall Plan. What is the Marshall Plan? What does the Marshall Plan say? It's a history class now. Have you ever heard about the Marshall Plan?
Yes,
America for
Americans.
from the north.
Yes,
America
from
for
the South or
America.
Central America.
America for North Americans. So that's the problem. Yeah. Ok, fim do momento da doutrinação. Alguém mais quer falar?
Bolsonaro vai pegar o senhor, professor?
Ah, que pegue. Não tenho medo de genocida. Não tenho medo de genocida. Ok. Sabe, a gente tem função pública, a gente tem que gerar crítica. Não adianta, isso aqui é ciências humanas, isso aqui não é brincadeira. Né?
Verdade.
Professor dando as mãos pro Felipe Neto indo receber o processo.
Pois é, tem o grupo do Felipe Neto. Tem o grupo do Felipe Neto. Qualquer coisa eu peço para João Júnior me defender. Vamos lá, gente. Anybody else would like to make a comment on this thing of English becoming a product. Just one more consideration. What are they selling nowadays in English schools? Are they really selling a language? What is the product?
No, no. For example, in the course I teach, I work there, and they are always telling the students, for example, tem uma propaganda que é assim, você já se matriculou em tal curso, eu não vou dizer qual, aí fica assim, mas é porque que o inglês é uma língua que você precisa para o mercado de trabalho, que não sei o quê, entendeu? Então, eles não estão mais vendendo a língua, eles estão vendendo a língua como um meio de tu ser bem sucedido no mundo, entendeu? Não é
Sim,
mais só a língua.
no meu TCC, 2002, eu entrevistei alguns professores do meu Instituto de Língua, onde eu trabalhava, e esse discurso era recorrente, né? O inglês como ferramenta. Agora, o que é uma ferramenta? Uma língua, ela te constitui. E eu vou falar um pouquinho em português, porque a gente vai entrar numa teoria cabeluda aqui. Isso, faz isso comigo mesmo, Mirelle. Em 2002 eu nasci, a Mirelle fala, tá bom, tio Suquita, né? Tá bom, tá certo. Então, assim, essa ideia da ferramenta. Tem uma caixa de ferramenta ali na prateleira. Eu tô com a caixa de ferramenta o tempo inteiro? A língua
Não,
portuguesa eu não tenho como abandonar. Ela me constitui, ela faz parte de mim. Ela molda o meu ser, o meu modo de pensar. A língua inglesa também. A partir do momento que eu aprendi a língua inglesa, muitos professores falam isso, né? Vocês têm que pensar em inglês. Vocês têm que fazer um esforço para pensar em inglês, para viver o dia a dia de vocês em inglês. Mas esse discurso da ferramenta é contraditório com essa postura pedagógica. Porque a ferramenta é algo que você pega quando precisa e depois joga na estante. É o brinquedo, que é o carrinho que a criança gosta de brincar, pega, brinca, devolve lá. É manipulável, é um produto. Pode quebrar, pode danificar, se você não ficar se atualizando, se você não fizer um intercâmbio. Então, esses cursos, eles nunca vão terminar de te vender coisas. Por que não? Ah, não, porque você agora... Né, quem foi que disse que você sabe zero inglês quando entra no livro 1, que você nunca ouviu uma palavra, nunca ouviu uma música norte-americana, britânica, australiana, whatever, e que você terminou no livro 13? Por que você tem que aprender inglês? Começando do Simple Present e terminando no Future Perfect Continuous. É assim que é no português? Essa é a diferença, lembra lá do acquisition e learning. Né? Para o learning
Professor,
tem um processo que é antinatural, uma segmentação em matérias. Sim, pode falar, querida.
sem falar que um curso de inglês, tipo, numa escola de idiomas, demora, tipo, 8 anos pra pessoa, pra eles ter um nível avançado, sabe? Eu,
Eu dei uma banana para todo mundo nesse negócio aí, viu? Mas depois eu te conto. Continue.
eu trabalhava num curso de inglês que, tipo, a pessoa só tinha praticamente 2 horas de aula por semana. E a
Uhum.
pessoa, tipo, e o curso inteiro, assim, durava 8 anos de curso. Eu ficava chocada. É muito tempo estudando inglês, muito tempo.
É o padrão, porque a escola de porte médio, um instituto de língua de porte médio tem 5, 6, 8 salas, quando muito, e precisa dar giro, né? Então a carga horária é reduzida, uma mensalidade cuja parcela ínfima vai para o professor, mas a questão da segmentação do inglês como disciplina, né? Também serve a ideia de livros. Então, assim, você se sente superior porque eu estou no livro 8 e você está no livro 4, né? Como se número de livro determinasse sua competência linguística. Eu lembro que eu dei uma banana para os caras, porque eu fiz até o livro 4, caí fora, fui tocar guitarra, fui ouvir Beatles, quando voltei eu estava no livro 13 e não sabia. E estava
Eu fiz
dando
isso
aula.
também, professor.
E estava dando aula. É, é, se fosse francês, talvez eu não tivesse tido esse sucesso. Cada ser humano tem uma facilidade para um determinado grupo linguístico, uma dificuldade para outros. Né? Então, isso não determina. E outra, quem disse que você tem que falar com sotaque perfeito, com a batata na boca do britânico, né? Ou com R retroflexo do norte-americano? Competência comunicativa não é competência fonética, não é competência morfossintática, né? É uma competência de nível geral. Né? Eu conheço pessoas que acham que inglês é poation no fim das palavras, que deu tudo certo, né? E conseguem estabelecer suas relações de negócio com o exterior. Né? Mas, Enfim, se alguém quiser fazer mais alguma consideração.
Só mencionar a importância do que o senhor falou anteriormente sobre a questão do ensino do inglês e que a língua ela é realmente política. Então, acredito que um dos principais pontos que o capítulo 1 ele traz é a questão de valorizar justamente essa visão da política sendo ensinada também através da língua no ensino do inglês em sala de aula.
Sim, a
A gente
ideologia
pensa
do
que é só
consumo.
gramática,
Política, política muito além da política, da política, digamos, de esquerda, de direita, de centro, whatever. Política como ideologia do consumo, né? E por falar em consumo, a primeira pergunta que eu fiz antes de começar todo esse talk aqui foi: o que que eles estão vendendo nas escolas? Eu já vi muitos anúncios do tipo: torne-se fluente em 15 semanas. Eles não estão mais vendendo uma língua. Eles estão vendendo a noção de fluência. Agora, o que é fluência? Tem cantores que cantam perfeitamente uma música em língua inglesa e não sabem o que estão cantando. Ou só sabem aquilo. Memorizaram. Você pode memorizar e se sentir fluente. A ideia não é te fazer ter a fluência. É te fazer se sentir fluente. Nós vivemos num mundo em que se perceber é muito mais importante do que ser. É por isso que nós temos tantas pessoas de uma determinada classe social que se enxergam como pertencendo a outra e identificadas com a ideologia de outra, muitas vezes contraditória com seus interesses mais imediatos. Mas elas operam como agentes daquela outra classe social a que elas julgam pertencer ou querem pertencer. A professora Marilena Chauí, da filosofia da USP, ela diz que a classe média, sobretudo a brasileira, ela vive morrendo de medo de voltar a ser pobre e aspirando, sonhando com o dia que jamais chegará de se tornar rica. Um dia eu acreditei que ia ficar rico dando aula. Ou engano.
Sonhou muito.
Sonhei muito alto. A minha orientadora me chamou para a realidade. Falou: calma, Zé. Dando aula você não fica rico, não. Melhor você arrumar alguém para te deixar uma herança, né? Ou então dar
Só
algum
se o senhor vender
golpe.
curso na internet, professor.
Verdade. Faz que nem o cara que eu mandei no chat,
Vende
que eu não
curso na
citei
internet,
nomes.
Vira coach. Ou youtuber.
virar coach.
Hoje, nenhum adolescente mais hoje quer ser professor, engenheiro, arquiteto,
Quer ser
médico,
TikToker agora.
quer ser TikToker. É isso. É isso. É a ideologia do
Pior que dá
efêmero.
dinheiro.
É a ideologia do efêmero. Dá dinheiro para um em cada 1 milhão, um sucede, né? De cada 1 milhão de youtubers, um vira Felipe Neto. Né?
Ei, professor, tem mais youtuber publicando livro do que professor, né?
Sim, sim, sim. E os professores estão indo para o YouTube e os youtubers indo para as editoras. É um movimento, no mínimo, intrigante. Ok. Podemos, então, seguir a discussão com o próximo grupo. E, obviamente, se retornar aos assuntos do primeiro grupo, a gente pode fazer o intercalamento dos assuntos. Eu acho proveitoso. Aqui não tem o trabalho do grupo 1, do grupo 2, do grupo 4. Tem o trabalho de todo mundo que dialoga. Até porque estamos falando do mesmo autor, né? Só lembrando para a gente recontextualizar, a aula virou português mesmo, né? So remember you to contextualize that we are talking about the early 90s and even in the 2020s, the situation seems to be slightly changed, but not so different. I mean, in the global setting, English is still the protagonist. And it's a long-lasting language, but not as much as Latin was. So there seems to be a long way ahead for us to keep discussing in terms of students, researchers in linguistics, in language culture, in identity matters. Okay, so group 2, the members are not group 2, it's group D. The members are Ana Maria, Davi, Mariana, and Viviane. I think one of you, if I'm not mistaken, one of you had to give up the class. I don't know. You're going to say.
Ana Maria.
Yes, Ana Maria is going to follow my tradition. She went to Fefeleche. Parabéns para ela. Vamos deixá-la. Vai que ela assiste, né? Ana Maria foi. Vamos, a gente tem que elogiar. Quando é uma desistência, assim, a gente fica quieto, mas quando é uma coisa. Ela trocou a gente pela Fefeleste USP e foi lá ter aula lá com os meus mestres. Né? Acho que com os meus não, que os meus já aposentaram, né? Vocês falaram que nasceram quando eu estava defendendo TCC? Vamos lá então, gente. Have a nice presentation. The word is yours.
Okay, so good morning. We are going to talk about chapter 2 of Philipson's book about the linguistic imperialism. The group is formed by Davi, Mariana, and Viviane.
So, good morning. Um, what I want to say right now is about English, but it can be. We have already another examples on the history, like Russia. Russia did this, but we're gonna focus on English because it was the examples that book was presenting. So, in um, first, why people decide to have only one language? We have to, because it's a project really hard to to gain. So it demands a lot of effort, a lot of planning. So why you would you do it at first time at first? And this is gonna be about the countries that are on speaks English. Um, First of all, it, about because of the patriotism. Um, they have this feeling that if you have just one language, is easier to get to have this feeling of we all are a nation, we are a superior nation and all. So it is good in quotes for this feeling of unity. Um, the second one is for the progress. Yes. Because some of it say that um, how's that? Yeah, that we, it's like the example of the famous history of the people Bible, the Babel, that nobody could do anything because nobody understands anyone. So they think, oh, so we need to have just one language because for this we can, if we have a lot of language of different languages, we could not work together. It would be a total mess. The the third reason that I found it is by spirit. This is most common when you are a group that came to a country, and then you decide to this is gonna be the mother language, like the official language, like the British, the Grand British, I don't remember how to speak, Gran-Bretanha, that they use this to like kind of kill the Celtic language. So they just have the English language. I think I don't remember if it's Ireland or Scotland that it has this same problem with their own language, but they have. You can pass. So what caused all of this? Like, what is the consequences of all this process? And most of this problem is going to people that doesn't speak this language. I don't think that it has a lot of people problems for people who already speaks this language. It's kind of is bad just for the people who doesn't speak the language. The first problem is dehumanization of the other all the language speakers, the Native Americans is like, well, they are like, for an imperialist people. The views is they are really people. We don't need to care about them. They need to uh, get get used with us. They are the ones who are different. They are the ones who has get to get in the same level of us, who has to speak the same language of us. As this is bad because this could be like a protest to to make genocide, to make slavery, and other things like they it's not uncommon to hear that this that they think that these people that could not speak English are what is the word, um uncivilized uncivilized uncivilized. It has the cultural examination. We lost a lot of. We can also see this on all country in Brazil. We have the Tupi. Like we right now are trying to uh, get feedback, but yeah, it's still a process. But continue. When you make this dehumanization of the other speakers, we in this thing, in these actions, we can lose a lot of culture, a lot of the folklore, a lot of the story of these people. We lost a lot with this. We have the validation of land grabbing. And this kind of goes hand, hand to hand with dehumanization, because if you don't see these people are civilized as equal as you don't need to respect them, or they say, or what they say about this is my land. You can do this. It's just like, yes,
They don't even have a soul, so you can make them slaves like the black
yes,
people.
yes. This is it. This and this about the land of an. You do not own this land, so it's our now. It's ours now. And we have also the identification crisis. This is when this is already too, like, we have a really advanced stage, like when you are, for example, a Native American, and you live in US, you have this feeling. You may have this feeling that you are the wrong here. You are not supposed to be the way you are. The way you people say that is normal to be. Like, you should be like a North American. You should speak English. You should um, behave like a North American. You should behave like a Native American with your own culture, your own behaviors, your own language. So this all creates this sense of we are wrong, or you are wrong, and you should be the way you are. That's it. That's it.
Hello, guys. Good morning. Um, so I'm gonna try to be succinct on my topic. It's gonna be hard because my notes are super long, but I'm gonna try to make it understandable for everybody and not take too much of your time because we still have another part to present as well. All right, so I want to start by explaining some terms that I'm going to use during my part. The first two terms that we need to make a difference of are between two groups of countries with different roles in English-speaking, society. We have the core English-speaking countries, which Philipson classifies as Britain, the United States, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand. He also calls them Europeanized societies. So some of these countries, they are former colonies, but they are more similar to their colonizers in many ways. And we have the periphery English countries. So they are countries that use English. They have two subgroups in those. So you have the countries that were colonized by Britain, and they had English imposed as a language for them. And you have other countries that have adopted English to be used in different parts of their lives. Yes, teacher?
No, let me just be colonized for a while. At this moment of the pandemic, I wish I was a colonized guy and I wish I lived in New Zealand. They are
Yeah.
coronavirus free zone. Just a joke.
They had a huge show this past week, like lots of people together, nobody wearing masks, but they don't have the spread is super controlled.
Yeah, they have vaccines, not chloroquine.
All right, so keep in mind these two groups. We have core English-speaking countries. They're usually more powerful and they're more European in some way, even though not all of them are in Europe. And you have the periphery English countries, which is going to be the focus of my part here. So all the groups have already talked about how English has spread around the world. It started through British colonialism, but then we got international interdependence. We had revolutions in technology that fomented English as a very important tool. We have also transport, as international travels and stuff became more common. We have communications and we have commerce, which is very, very important.
And in Philipson's time, we didn't even had Web 2.0. Now we have Web 2.0, we have Twitter, we have TikTok, we have
social networks
Instagram.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Social networks, especially those that give you the sensation that you are the producer of content.
Yeah. Blogs, especially, are huge. I have some updated data from when the book was published. In the book, in our chapter, they mention the number of English speakers in the world, and it barely reaches millions. They have a projection for billions, but I got some data from an article published in Babel's website in March of 2021. According to that article, we have 1.35 billion total English speakers. 360 million have English as their first language. So that leaves us with about 990 million people that speak English as a second or a foreign language. That's a lot, guys. And these numbers are not super accurate. The numbers fluctuate because it depends on the notion and the definition of proficiency. So that can vary. for a lower number or for a higher number?
Yeah, the biggest lie somebody told me was that I was proficient in French.
Oh no.
Je ne parle porra nenhuma.
Oh man.
Faltou
That's
pá.
great.
Je ne parle porra nenhuma pá.
Yeah, you missed the pa. All right, guys. So we have other two concepts that are super important is the concepts of English as a second language and English as a foreign language. In the book, Philipson presents kind of concept for these two terms, but he also says that that varies because it's still being discussed. Different academics use different definitions for those, but the ones that are going to be used in this are English as a second language. It means that English is not a native language, but it's used widely as a medium of communication in domains such as education and government. And in the United States, programs that teach English to people whose mother tongue is not English, but like for immigrants, for example, people who have immigrated there and they're going to live there, so they have to learn English, are also considered English as a second language people. And we have English as a foreign language, which is the case of most countries, I think, including Brazil, because it is not used as a means of instruction or in the government, but it is learned in school for communicating, usually with the goal of communicating with people in English, or to read and write and produce stuff in English. Yes?
Well, I don't want to give any spoil. Are you going to touch the matter of bilingual schools in this presentation?
Not really.
Okay, so it's a tendency nowadays that we are a country with visible social divisions and inequalities. And in Brazil, there seems to be coming a kind of a parallel reality in which we have two countries, one in which English is becoming a second language, and another one in which English remains a foreign language. Why do I say that? Because the upper classes, it's becoming more and more common that the upper classes put their children in bilingual schools. And then the instruction is in English. So we have many Brazils, but in terms of linguistic policy, two. One in which English is foreign language, and another one in which it's in a process of becoming a second language, and children learn it earlier and earlier and earlier. If you are curious about this notion that some people, some bilingual schools, and some language institutes try to promote, you can read an academic thesis by Bianca Garcia, which happens to be almost my sister. She was a classmate in undergraduate course and then in masters and doctors, and her thesis is called Quanto Mais Cedo Melhor. And she will analyze the discourse, the use of neuroscience discourse to justify the teaching of English for very young children who don't even speak Portuguese very well. So she will use discourse analysis to question why, what is the pseudo-scientific discourse behind that. So it's a very interesting work. For those of you who are interested in researching on applied linguistics, I'd recommend. It's just a consideration about English as a second language and a foreign language, because I think we can put the touch the point here of the Brazilian case and Brazilian social stratification.
Yes, and in Brazil is just starting in this journey, but other countries have already made the transition. They were formerly countries with English as a foreign language, and they have become countries with English as a second language. The the book mentions the Nordic countries like Scandinavia, the countries of Scandinavia and Finland, and that has already happened there. But when the book was written, it was still a process, but now it's very much developed. I've met some people online who are from these countries. I have a friend who's Finnish, and he uses English every day in life, for work, everything.
I think it's Finland, the happiest country in the world. I'm not sure if it's Finland or Denmark. I think it's Finland.
It's Finland, yeah. And all of my Finnish friends say that that's just such a joke because they're all depressed and anxious, just like everybody else.
Well, if they are the happiest country in the world, I don't know why Kimi Raikkonen is so stupid. I don't know if you like Formula One, but those of you who know him, he listens something on the radio. Oh, you have to change your tires now. He said, "Leave me alone. I know what I'm doing." He's kind of stupid, but I know they drink a lot. But it's a stereotype. It's a stereotype. Go on, Vivi.
It's
Sorry.
very cool there. There's a justification for it.
Yeah.
Anyways, there's a very important thing to think about when we talk about these numbers of speakers and stuff. It's the numbers of speakers are not revealing unless we look at the functions which English serves in the country that English is being used, and its relationship to the other languages present in the countries. Can you press the slide? Can you go to the next one? Thank you. So I'm gonna open this with the question that is on the slide. And it's interesting. The book doesn't like give an answer, but it's interesting to think about this because this is a bit complicated. So do the standard English of core English-speaking countries and periphery English variants form one language, or are there now several Englishes? We've had this discussion in Portuguese a lot in class. I don't know if everybody has had the opportunity, but European Portuguese and Brazilian Portuguese and African Portuguese and Asian Portuguese, are they all the same language? You know, you can apply this thinking for any language from colonizers and colonies, you know.
Some people refer to
in many spheres.
Some people refer to Brazilian Portuguese as brasileiro. Fala brasileiro. Ele não fala brasileiro. Ah, ele não é daqui, ele não fala brasileiro. This is common in Brazil, to call our language brasileiro. And if you go to Portugal, Brazilians giving interviews would be subtitled, and the other way around. It's interesting.
Yeah, and it's important to discuss because it has many different aspects that we need to analyze. There's political aspects, we have social aspects, and as teachers or future teachers or students of teaching,
identity matters.
We have to consider the pedagogical aspect as well.
Identity matters are involved, as we shall see in future classes.
So there are some people who defend that the variant that should be standard for everybody should be the British English because it's the original English. But that is such a big challenge to establish that. You know, it completely ignores social linguistics and the reality of the countries in which English is used. It's for me, it's an impossible task to uniformize, you know, make it uniform for everybody to speak the same English. It's just too hard.
A language is not submitted to the law. It's submitted to its population. So of course, if you are proud of your language and you want to preserve it, it will last longer. But if you are not very affectionate for your language, the tendency is that it gets mixed with other languages. And I think it explains why Brazilians are so open-minded to English terms. If you consider the Portuguese, they don't they will never call it a mouse. They will call it a rato.
Yeah, yeah.
I mentioned this, that the Portuguese do not use the word bunda because bunda comes from an African origin, so they prefer to say cu. Yeah. I don't know if you saw the meme of the Portuguese woman saying that she had a plant for avoiding coronavirus. Eu tenho cá uma planta que é muito boa para o coronavírus e tal, e vai mostrando a planta. Esta planta, como ela se chama? Chama-se planta o cu em casa. Né? E para o brasileiro aquilo soa como um palavrão, mas é uma palavra normal para o português. Para o português de Portugal é simplesmente o traseiro, né? Planta o cu em casa. Né? Ok, go on, Vivi.
It's one of those cases like where you can leave the fifth grade, but the fifth grade lives in you forever. Like we cannot see the word cool and not laugh. It's impossible. All right, can you go to the next slide, please? This is my last slide, and it's like the bulk of what I have to talk about. But we have very little time, so I'm gonna try to be very concise here. So
why is it round, not flat? This is ideological.
This is a pancake. If you flip it, the other side, it has the rest of the countries. All right, guys. So dominant languages in terms of power, because you cannot separate one thing from the other. Everything that we discuss here in English can be applied to other languages from other countries that dominated other countries. So first thing that I have to say is that, well, as we saw from what we discussed before, English globally has been changing the languages in many countries. It is replacing some established languages and is displacing others in some aspects. So even if a country doesn't have it as an official language or as a government language, it is still being used extensively in education. A lot of countries have adopted English as the means of instruction in universities. So even if it is not officially their language, it has displaced languages that could have been used in those situations. And most countries who have like more than one language present in their important important spheres use the colonial language, so the language of the colonizers, for high status activities. The dominant local language is usually used for less prestigious functions, but still like on a higher sphere. And then the smaller languages in countries that have more than two languages are used for other purposes, and usually for day-to-day communication or family communication. I have this. The book presents specific cases in Africa and Asia, and I'm going to talk very fast about these. So English has a big pull as a whole. It is a very strong influence in many countries. It is presented as giving access to power and resources as a prestigious language. It brings material and social benefits and advantages to people. This is how it is presented, not necessarily how it actually works in reality everywhere. And it is presented also as a means to give you advantages in the competitive nature of life. You know, like it gives you an advantage for life, and that's so crazy.
And this is thank you for using a word that we have seen in Laraya, nature, because this idea of competition is they try to sell it to us as natural. It's natural to be competitive. So it's an ideology. Now, when we talk about this notion of competition, we are talking about neoliberal ideology, which is an ideology that claims not to be an ideology. When you read Michel Foucault, which is the next book we are going to read, you're going to see the difference between razão instrumental and razão prática. An instrumental reason is a means to achieve an end. Now, a practical reason is the end in itself. This notion of neoliberalism sells itself nowadays as a practical reason, an end in itself. We are not ideological. Look, Finland or Denmark or Brazil or China, which is a communist country, all of them use neoliberal techniques of trade, of managing the economy, because this is the best thing to do. Competition is the best thing to do. There's no way out. So it's an ideology that claims not to be ideological, that claims to be neutral. And the worst ideology in the world is the one that claims to be no ideology at all. So when you are not ideological, you are being ideological. You are making things homogeneous. It's just an intervention, Vivi, because I think there's a link with what we have been discussing in first chapter and now. Okay. Sorry.
Oh yeah, of course. Everything is connected. There's no way to escape that. So very quickly, in Africa, the situation of most English-speaking countries in Africa is almost the same, so we can kind of lump them together. But bear in mind that there are particularities to every individual situation. So this is like a generalization, but it's the most common thing happening, or was in the 90s, but it's still happening today. So it's very crazy that English is an official language in countries that encompass 60% of Africa's population. But from these 60%, only a very, very small part of the population actually uses English, actually speaks English in their daily lives. And so being an official language means nothing, socially speaking. There was an effort in the 60s to strengthen local languages, and it has worked in part, but that movement kind of got squashed again, especially after the whole globalization thing took force again. So it is better than it was before, but it's still a very complicated situation. And education and schools in particular are a big force in bringing English and making English more important than it was before, or that they tried to show before. Because the same way that when it was colonized, they put schools and forced people to abandon their culture and their original languages in favor of the new language, it is schools again that are forcing people to go back to English as a means of instruction, as a means of progress in life and everything. So it always starts in schools. It doesn't go far if it doesn't start in education.
And if you choose an academic career, you will never escape English. You have to take a proficiency exam to enter the master's or the doctor's. And one of the languages, well, there may be a way out, like Spanish and French, but the reality is that most students take English and some other language, because 90%, it's not exactly 90%, but the majority and almost the totality of scientific production is carried in English. and there is some kind of discredit for those scientific productions that do not have an English version. Of course, that we have competition, especially the Russians nowadays. Some people claim that we are going to have a version 2.0 of Cold War because, for example, the Sputnik V vaccine was extremely criticized because there is no access to articles, to scientific evidence that it's effective. But in fact, there is. But according to Russian scientific procedures, Russian discoveries should first be published in Russian magazines, in Russian scientific magazines, and kept only in Russia, if I'm not mistaken, for 6 months, and then published in other magazines. This is a way to protect Russian production. I once worked as a kind of interpreter for a Russian professor who helped my brother with his doctors. And I got really surprised that he said he used the term like they, and when he says they, he means the Russian government. It was the times of Boris Yeltsin. He said they destroyed the Soviet Union, because for scientists, the Soviet Union was a very powerful way of organizing scientific production and promoting scientists. So we had brains escaping Russia to go to Germany, to go to the United States, just as we had in Germany when Einstein went to the United States because of Nazism, and just the way we have now in Brazil. Have you ever heard the term fuga de cérebros? People are leaving Brazil. Scientists are leaving Brazil because we do not have financing. CAPES and CNPq are, the grants, as bolsas, the grants, they do not have an update in the amount of money since the 1990s. So it was easy. No. Let me correct something. Minister Roberto Amaral in 2004, by the end of the first Lula government, gave an update. But I remember my brother was able to raise three children with a grant, with a doctor's grant. Now, you may... Em bom português, você pode passar fome ganhando bolsa de doutorado. Se você só tiver a bolsa, você passa fome. Porque você não paga aluguel, you don't buy books, you don't travel, you don't go to congresses, to conferences. So we have these brains escaping. I'm mentioning that because Russia has a kind of protective strategy to keep Russian scientific production, at least for some time, only in Russian. So if you want to know what's going on in Russian scientific setting, you must read Russian. If else, wait for English version.
Wrong.
Sorry?
They're not completely wrong.
They are not. They are not. They are patriots. Let's put it this way. They are self-protecting. And that explains the pioneer features of the vaccine Sputnik V. It's not by chance that it's called Sputnik. Do you know what the Sputnik was? It was the first satellite in orbit. It was a pioneer enterprise, just like the vaccine. And I remember watching Global News, and they said, "Oh, there's no scientific evidence. Oh, they are jumping steps of the testing procedures." They were not jumping; they were accelerating. But it was kept inside Russian community.
Oh, okay. So very, very briefly about Asia, we have two very distinct cases. We need to separate India from the other Asian communities because India is on a fight for linguistic independence. The Indian variation of English is very, very strong. it has its own production. It has their literature, it has their entertainment. Bollywood is out there
A
producing
three
stuff,
and number three.
and it is one of the strongest variations of English in a periphery country, periphery English country. So it is different. The rest of uh, former British colonies in Asia still they follow almost the same process as in Africa, but because of economical and political advantages, they are further along on the process of using English as a second language. So it is the higher mean of education's language, basically. Almost all universities, all big universities in Asia, have English as the language of the higher learning, and it's been used more and more in political settings. So now I'm gonna pass to my buddy. You can
Oh,
continue now, Mariana.
sorry. There was somebody else to talk, and I was taking your time. Sorry, so sorry. But you have the time you need. Okay.
Okay, so I'm going to talk about the language promotion actually. So the language can be promoted by religion and trade because of the conquest and adoption of the invaders' language. The first example of this in history is the Castilian with Queen Isabella in 1492. And the religion is used with the missionaries because they cheated because they taught the natives, and they taught the languages, the language, the culture, and the trade because there are some benefits like use the invaders language. It's better to negotiate, it's better to sell things, it's better to buy things, right? Uh, um, an example with the religion is that, let me see, the naval officer, it is on page 32 of the book. Philipson says, for instance, the naval officer in charge of French Gabon in 1882 reported to the French Foreign Minister that American missionaries were welcome because they were incapable of teaching in French. So here is one of the examples of how the religion can promote a language. So other languages they want the English privilege as a language and try to promote it around the world, like French and German. French, I gave an example, and they also have the Francophonie, and now the French is speak all around the world, and it has a lot of people that speak French, and more than in the past. And German, they try to promote with governmental policies to put German as a school subject around the world because they think that teaching a language it can bring respect for the country which the language is spoken. And the British, um, it was already promoted around the world, but it was more promoted in the Second World War with in a part of Nazi German and fascist Italy, and um, they create the British Council that exists until today, and this council it tries to spread the culture, the English culture around the world, and it helps in the external relationships with other countries.
And cultura inglesa is deeply linked to the British Council. Okay.
Yes. So we have the USA after the Second World War. The USA becomes one of the world powers because they had the political, the economical, the military power. We had exportation of movies of Hollywood. We had exportation of comics, books, music, and it brings to us the language, the culture, expressions, gírias, and the world after World War II was dominated by technology and trade again, and USA dominated these two things. So the English language was more spread around the world, and there is a standard to be reached, right? So if you don't reach this standard, you are not successfully, right? Um, so, okay. And we have also the opposition to the dominance of English. We have the opposition with colonized people, European parliamentarians, political enemies, and intellectuals from core and periphery English countries. So Gandhi, he was against the dominance of English because in India, the English brought mental slavery, the English brought um, a culture erasure, like this. And this guy here, I don't know how to say his name, but he is from Kenya. His name is Ngugi wa Thiong'o, yes. And he said that when he was a child and he was living in Kenya, he said that he and his family, they sit in the backyard, and they start to talk about traditions, history in their language. But when he came to school, he was seated to he was seated in English, and then he was confused because why do I have to speak English, right? My mother tongue is other language,
Mm-hmm.
and there are some works that say that the whole of language it's so powerful that people that are treated in English, they internalize the colonizers' norms. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. So that's it. And the conclusion. So as we can see, the English is a global language around the world. We use English in a lot of things like internet. We use English to listen to music, and this is very this is a very example of how English became this powerful nation, right? But it can also bring some troubles, some consequences, like there are a lot of cultures that can be erased, that are a lot of cultures that can be suppressed by English, and the countries that have their language promoted think that this is a good thing because with the language promoted, the people in other countries have this country. For example, people in Brazil want to go to Disney, want to go to United States because it's a dream. They want to have contact with native English speakers, right? And
Para ver o
that's
Pateta hoje, a gente fica aqui mesmo.
yes. So, and also people have get a better job better jobs with this acknowledge with English, French, German, right? So that's it.
Oh, thank
Thanks.
you very much. I had two interesting seminars today, and I'd like just to mention. I know we have extrapolated our time, so all these seminars, but especially the first two, they are all about what I call cultural awareness. So, as English teachers, you are going to have a dual task ahead you. You are going to deal with identities. You are going to deal with different cultures, not only with a language that has a grammar, a vocabulary, a morphosyntactic structure. You are going to deal with the minds, but also with the hearts of people and the way they identify themselves. So I think that we should be aware as we take a language of power to the classroom, not to confuse or not to make our students feel inferior because they don't have that dominance over the language at all. They are just starting, or maybe in a misleaded conception make them praise more English than they do than they praise Portuguese or their mother tongue, whatever it is. So cultural awareness is not saying that English is the language of the dominant colonizers and I don't want to learn it. That was my brother's positioning, for example. This is not my point. Okay, this is the language of the colonizer. I know there's a policy behind it. I know there's politics and economic powers behind that, but I'm going to learn it, to understand its strategies, because it has great literature, it has music, it has cinema behind it, and I want to consume also productions in English, not exclusively productions in English. When you mentioned, Mariana, the importance of the US, I'd say, for example, everybody knows I'm into British rock, but even British rock is a colonized movement because rock music was invented in America, in the United States, and it was an export product to England. And the Beatles, when they recorded albums and they had to release these albums in the US, the accent that was used in their songs was dominantly American accent, and that there's a reason for that. The same has happened to Jerry Lee Lewis. Jerry Lee Lewis, when he wanted an international career, he crossed the ocean and went to Britain. And because of conservative values in Britain, then this is another topic, he was kind of expelled from Britain because he was married with a teenager. But anyway, so the dominance of the US comes after World War II with military power, but I'd say the main factor is cultural power. We are all culture consumers. Uh, every class has a compulsive Netflix consumer, or a music consumer, or kind of fashion consumer, or somebody that wants to go to Disney, as you mentioned. So American way of life is everywhere, colonizing our brains and our hearts. But we should not. I wouldn't say to be immune to that. It's impossible to be immune, but have a degree of criticism and caution. In other words, cultural awareness. Um, Viviane is saying that many artists did and still do that. Moving to the US is almost a necessity. Yeah, the Rolling Stones nowadays, all of them live in New York City. They're British, but they live in New York City. Well, anyway,
Professor, I only
yes,
have a little image to show to
for
you
sure. Feel
to
comfortable.
show. So I don't know if you can see, but here we have the culture of consume that we consume a lot of things of English culture, especially Disney, Coca-Cola. You know,
Yeah,
it's
there's PT. There's PT there. I see a red star. É tudo
yes,
culpa do PT. PT Chaco.
yes.
Mhm.
So this is
E-
how we consume the USA culture. Like a lot of people have now Disney Plus, Netflix, Spotify, Amazon Prime,
Yes.
right?
Yes. Ah, eu vou comprar na Amazon, que é mais barato. Legal, é mais barato. Você está comprando na Amazon, está quebrando a livraria do lado da sua casa, depois a Amazon vai pôr o preço que ela quiser. Essa brincadeira de competição, esse discurso competitivo do neoliberalismo, ele funciona até um certo ponto, né? Depois ele vira monopólio, ele vira oligopólio, né? Um exemplo clássico disso é aqui no Nordeste a Guanabara, né? A Guanabara quebrou todas as empresas de transporte de ônibus locais com passagens muito baixas e depois dominou tudo, né? Mas enfim, muito legal a imagem, Mariana. Eu acho que muito ilustrativa, né? Assim, o Philipson lá, não vou dar spoiler dos próximos seminários, mas ele vai falar dessa coisa. O inglês ele tenta entrar pela sedução. Se não dá, ele vai por outro viés. Para quem tem um pouco mais de interesse e gosta um pouco mais dessas teorias da conspiração, que não são tão da conspiração assim, tem no YouTube um documentário chamado Assassinos Econômicos, que é um ex-agente da CIA falando dos processos de estratégias de dominação dos Estados Unidos sobre outros países. Eles falam, primeiro a gente vai com a economia, tenta quebrar a economia. Não deu, a gente vai com o militar. E aí ele vai explicando, né, como funcionam as intervenções dos Estados Unidos em outras nações. Outro documentário interessante, está no Netflix, Privacidade Hackeada, tá, sobre a eleição do Donald Trump. Mas a gente vai tocar nesses assuntos numa próxima aula, porque já estourou, vocês estão morrendo de fome, está todo mundo querendo almoçar e eu também. Tá? Espero que vocês tenham gostado, eu adorei os seminários. Eu vou, obviamente, não vou lançar nota para ninguém agora, eu quero ver os 4 seminários, tá? Mas tenho certeza que vocês vão ficar satisfeitos com os resultados, assim como eu estou, tá bom? Mais alguém quer falar alguma coisa?
Eu só tinha perguntado se o documentário era esse Assassino Econômico de John Perkins.
Acho que é esse. Acho que é esse sim, John Perkins. Acho que é esse. Ele é um ex-agente da CIA. É bem interessante o documentário. Né? E explica muita coisa do Brasil recente. Ok, então, pessoal, tem aula, né, às 14 e pouco. Já vou deixando o pessoal ir lá. Obrigado por tudo, tá? Se alguém quiser tirar alguma dúvida, eu sou o último a sair da sala, tá bom?
Bye, teacher.
Bye, bye.
Bye,
Abraço a
teacher.
todos.
Have a nice day. Bye, teacher.
Bye,
You too.
teacher.
Bye bye.
Bye.